mean, places need to survive, right? I mean,
Yeah,
colleges are about like they have to collect tuition. So I understand that there's a transactional nature to pretty much everything in education. But I do think at its core, that's quite often what's wrong with our educational system. Like you can trace it back to something transactional that becomes a barrier to the people actually working together in a way that brings about like real learning outcomes for people.
yeah, yeah. I
Not to
have
go off on a tangent here, but
no that.
I could really talk about that one for a while.
Yeah, I have so many thoughts that come up in
Because
my
people
mind.
get scammed. This is where I get upset is when people get taken advantage of. People who really want to learn something, they're taken advantage of by people who are just trying to make money. It's really one of the oldest scams in human history to find a vulnerable population. I think this is at its worst when it happens in education, people preying on the vulnerable. Because you got people trying to learn and improve their lives, and folks come in and basically just take their money when they're trying to improve their lives. I find that deplorable.
Yeah, yeah. We are all feeling the consequences when we live in a society where there's that imbalance, right? Like we are literally feeling the consequences of that right now. Um, I mean, there's a concept of shareholder supremacy that comes to mind immediately, right? Like, who are the real shareholders in the academy besides the most vulnerable, aka the students, right? Um, there's a professor at NYU. He's in the Department of Finance. His name is Scott Galloway, and I heard him speak in a YouTube little informal conversation like this one that he had with Andrew Yang, in on Yang's YouTube channel. But he says that this is his words, not mine. Every single year in that department, the deans get together and they boast about how many students they were able to reject that year. And he said that this is like tantamount to if you were to go to like a homeless shelter and like boasting about the people that you rejected to come into your institution. Um, I am fully aware. I don't know the constraints of deans and admin in general, but when there is no collective definition of learning that exists in the classrooms that I am in, in the classes that I'm in, that causes a lot of misery for students who are, as you say, trying to better their lives, trying to pass, trying to get their degrees towards upward social economic mobility. Um, and I recognize in the syllabus there are learning objectives that are written, but I think in that idea, um, the standard of our ethics should be greater than what is written in law, for example, right? Like sometimes you have a perfect example of this is the Titanic. When the Titanic first sailed the seas, the largest ferries, or the largest ships were these ferries that were like one fourth of Titanic size. And when the Titanic sailed, the amount of safety boats they had on ship was only the amount that was required for those small ferries, which is, like they were missing 75% of safety boats and safety equipment for if a catastrophic event were to happen. And then what do you know? When Titanic struck the iceberg, about 75% of the people died, right? And that's where the Titanic broke no laws. But I think, the standard of our ethics should be higher. And for the most part, for sure, I think I have a lot of respect and gratitude for people in education at large, right? Especially for people like yourself and, teachers who really think about what learning is. But if they define learning as solely um, anecdotal experiences, like I survived, so you should survive the same way, or I went through the system, like it's just so different because at the beginning of each term, the starting ground for each student is so drastically different, right? A prereq requirement checkbox is not enough to even get close to leveling out the playing field. And that's where, I feel personnel is really policy. And I've been so fortunate to have people like you in my life to help me define learning subtly, right? Through your actions, through your leadership, and through the activities and all the discussions that we've had. I get to kind of break that apart and slow it down because you've helped me do that.